Hello guys, my name is Colin and this is Colin Talks Crypto. In this very short video, I'm going to show you why in the CBBI we have decided to change the stock-to-flow metric to the halving-to-peak metric. And real quickly, let's take a look at the stock-to-flow metric. This is something that I hadn't seen previously, but upon looking closer and with Camille, we have both decided it is not in the CBBI's best interest to represent this somewhat inaccurate metric. And the reason I say somewhat inaccurate is because take a look at the 2013 peak. This was when Bitcoin hit approximately $1,150. And the way I was interpreting this previously, the way that the CBBI was interpreting this metric previously, was to take the distance from this teal colored line here and the distance horizontally to the peak. Now let's zoom in on the 2017 peak to make this point. Here's the intersection point of this horizontal and diagonal teal colored line, really the corner of that teal colored line. And I would take the distance from there over to the peak. So in this case, it's approximately one box or one grid cell distance to the right. Now let's go back to the chart and go back to 2013. What do we notice here? The peak is actually prior to this corner of this teal colored line. This teal line really just represents the moving average of the past 463 days. And so that's why it gives it this slope here. But anyways, there's an inconsistency here. In 2017, the peak was after the corner. And in 2013, the peak was before the corner here. And so it doesn't make sense to measure from this corner to the right and say that there's going to be a certain number of days to the right when it hasn't even consistently been that way. In fact, only one bull run, only in 2017, was the Bitcoin bull run peak to the right of this teal corner. In the 2013 Bitcoin bull run peak, it was actually prior to that. And so it's inconsistent, it's not conclusive, and therefore it doesn't make sense to include this as one of the metrics. Another one of the factors that Camille specifically wanted to bring to your attention as to why we are removing this metric is because take a look at the white space. What we see here, if we go back to the 2013 Bitcoin bull run, is if you take the Bitcoin price line represented by this rainbow series of dots, which is the distance from the halving, and take a look at how much space, how much white space is between the price line and the teal colored line here. There's quite a bit of space in between these two lines. Fast forward to 2017, and you can see there's quite a bit less space between this Bitcoin price line and the teal moving average line. Fast forward yet again to the current Bitcoin price cycle, and you can actually see that we're in the negative. There's actually negative space here, and we're not even close to the Bitcoin peak yet, we think. But the point is that there's negative space where there wasn't before. There was never this much negative space. And so what it clearly displays to me is that the Bitcoin price is actually decreasing in relation to the stock-to-flow 463-day moving average line every Bitcoin bull run cycle. This actually, to me, also paints the picture that it's not going to be accurate in the future. In fact, I don't think that it's going to be an accurate predictor of Bitcoin price tops. The more Bitcoin bull run cycles we have, I think the less accurate the stock-to-flow is going to be at predicting them because, first of all, it's inconsistent about where the peak is, and second of all, it's not accurately demonstrating where the price is above this moving average line. It doesn't matter what moving average line you use. You can even use the 10-day moving average, which is the purple line. And you can see that there's an enormous amount of space between the purple line and the price line in 2013. There's much less in the 2017 bull run, and there's none so far in the current Bitcoin price cycle. That's because, in my opinion, and I know this is almost like heresy in the Bitcoin space to say this about the stock-to-flow, but the stock-to-flow chart is not going to be accurate in predicting the Bitcoin bull run price tops, both in terms of time and in terms of price, because it's just off. It's almost like you need to use a form of linear regression to make the peaks actually consistently line up with the same amount of space between the price line and the moving average line. You would need to do something like that to make it make sense. But as it stands, the stock-to-flow chart, in my eyes, does not accurately reflect where the next Bitcoin bull run peak will be. Again, either in terms of price nor in terms of time. And so for those reasons, we are removing this from the CBBI, and this was not without a lot of careful thought. And what we are replacing this with is what we feel is a much more valuable and at least a much more likely accurate metric. And this is what we're calling halving-to-peak metric. And the halving-to-peak metric, H2P, is what we're going to now be using instead of the stock-to-flow. This is a CBBI custom-tailored metric. And so I'll explain it to you real briefly here. It's very simple. Basically, all it's doing is taking the distance from the Bitcoin halving event to the price top. And this distance here forms a number. It's a number of days. And you'll see how many days it is on your screen here. And so for 2013, we had this many days. Fast forward to the 2017 cycle between the Bitcoin halving event and the price peak, and you have this many days. Notice that it is more than before. It's not a consistent amount of days. And we're already this far through the Bitcoin bull run cycle, and we're not near the top yet, we think. And so if we take the multiplier of the distance between the first Bitcoin halving event and the peak, and the second Bitcoin halving event and the peak, we can actually extrapolate where we think that the third peak will be from the distance of the Bitcoin halving event to the future peak. And that is the anticipated figure that you see. And so this is the new metric for the CBBI, which is replacing the previous stock-to-flow metric. In case you were wondering, this is the halving-to-peak metric. Some of you have wondered about the theory of lengthening cycles, in which basically every Bitcoin bull run cycle is longer than the previous cycle. I'm not sure if that is necessarily the case, but the halving-to-peak indicator, the halving-to-peak metric, would account for that, as every cycle that becomes longer and longer makes the multiplier bigger and bigger. And so it is good to have a metric that would account for that. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that elucidates why we've made this change, because I know many of you would have this question. I know that the stock-to-flow is highly regarded, and it just is questionable to me when you look at the things that I have shown you here. It just doesn't look consistent. And I know that there's always a margin for error and nothing's going to be perfectly exact, but this chart to me looks like it's not keeping up with the halving nature of the Bitcoin price cycle, which is ironic because stock-to-flow itself is supposed to be definitively based on the stock-to-flow, the issuance rate of Bitcoin. And it doesn't look like it's accurately representing that to me. It looks like it's falling short. Every Bitcoin bull run, it's falling more and more short of the trend line, of the moving averages. And so to me, maybe it's useful for other things. To me, it's a pretty graph to look at. I don't necessarily mean to insult it, but I'm going to call it how I see it. And I don't see this as being useful. And I think that only in time will this become ever increasingly more apparent as more and more time goes on. As one more or two more Bitcoin bull runs go on, it will become readily apparent, I think, that the stock-to-flow chart is actually far from accurate at predicting the Bitcoin price. Guys, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoy the CBBI that Camille, Monich, and myself have put together for you. If you have found it useful, please do not hesitate to drop a donation, and the donation address is below. We've made it very easy for you. And with that being said, have a fantastic day and have a great bull run.